Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of NaNoWriMo.
Woo.
Time flies, doesn't it? How is
Honestly.
how is everybody feeling? Kyra, how do you feel about your whip?
Killing me softly?
Oh dear. Would you like to elaborate or should we leave it at that? Because that was quite a drop. That was quite a beat you dropped there. Elaborate or should we leave it at that? 'Cause that was quite a
I would say it's very much like it's it's just because of how emotional it is, but I'm enjoying the process. I feel like it's flowing out of me, but
nice.
killing me softly. I feel like that's true. A lot of writers probably feel that way about what they're writing. It's a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
catharsis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Emily, how's your high fantasy whip going?
Good. I have been pleasantly surprised with like some of the things that have sort of flowed out of my fingers.
What do you
But
mean?
yeah,
Elaborate, please.
I don't know, just like things that I didn't expect. Again, like we've talked about this, I'm a planner. So like when I get surprised when I'm writing and it sort of breaks script, I really like those moments. And there's been more of those just in the what are we on day 8 than like I anticipated at this point, which is exciting.
Oh, you mean like when you have a plan, but then the story sort of develops on its own, takes on its own life, and like you are okay. Now I got you.
Yeah.
Now I got it. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you both for joining me today. Everybody, if this is the first time you guys are seeing our beautiful faces, Emily is the social media manager at Manuscripts, hard at work to ensure the word about the books of our signed authors get out. And Kyra is the community coordinator and instructor at Manuscripts, teaching publishing workshops to make sure all of you who choose to place your trust in us publish, well, as successfully as they possibly can. And speaking of trust, I just tweeted yesterday about the manuscripts coming in from NaNoWriMo participants. How awesome is that? I am legitimately touched that all these writers are submitting, right?
Truly. It's the roll-in for me. I'm
Yeah.
just glad to see more and more of them trickle in throughout the month, especially as people feel more and more confident about their whips.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just really surprising to me because, as you can see on the banner, we are officially sponsors of NaNoWriMo for this year. So we are trying to support fiction, publish as much fiction as we can. But I thought that the manuscripts were going to start rolling in after NaNoWriMo, and yet you see all these wonderful writers just have their books on their shelves, and it's a huge privilege to me to see their trust placed in us in this way. So we truly appreciate it. And speaking of, probably will soon fill all the available space in the publishing cohorts if we continue this way. Which reminds me that writers and authors, we would love to read your book. The submission form will be dropped in a chat after the stream. Don't hesitate to send us your work. We would love to read all of it. And now that the infomercial is done, without further ado, please everybody allow me to welcome an inspiring writer and this year's NaNoWriMo participant, Aubrie Goble. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, girl. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for chatting with us today. Thank you for coming.
Of course. My pleasure. I love to talk.
Oh, we will be friends. We'll be good friends. No, listen, Aubrie. So you are a beautiful young lady. The decision to join NaNoWriMo is in and on itself admirable. It's not exactly an easy venture. I don't think that's an overstatement. So my first question for you is, where did you learn how to write? Or should I reframe? I'll reframe. Should I ask what gave you confidence to start writing at such a young age? I feel like that's a better way of putting it.
I don't know exactly. So I was homeschooled and my mom taught me how to write. And I've just kind of always been a writer. I've always been kind of creative. I've come up with stories in my head. And then I think when I was around 12, I decided that I was going to stop just having the stories live in my brain and I was going to write them out. And so from like 12, I think is when I started being more intentional about writing. It was still very on and off. And then the last 3 years, I've been very intentional about writing. And yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned something really interesting to me. You said your mom taught me how to write. Could you elaborate on that? Because that's
just
really
taught me the letters of the alphabet and how to make them into.
Oh, you mean like writing in general? So that's where
Yes.
the love came from.
Yeah.
Did she read to you too?
I think so, yes. I don't really remember that. My dad is also a writer, though, and he used to read us the Harry Potter books. He read us The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So my dad has also fostered my love of writing a lot. And because he's a writer as well, every time he learns something new about writing or even marketing, he'll like come talk to me and I was like, hey, this is what I learned. And so I learned a lot of writing things from him as well.
Oh, listen, this is just so heartwarming to hear. I mean, not to get too cynical, but I feel like it would not be an overstatement to say that most families treat writing not exactly as a career.
Yeah, there's so many stories about that, and I'm so grateful for my supportive parents.
I am. It's just great to hear you say that your parents actively foster your love of writing. We love to see it. So Aubrey, tell us about your writing projects. You have 2, but there is
actual writing projects.
I mean,
even more, but the
Yeah.
NaNoWriMo projects.
Exactly. Okay, so go. Elaborate.
So originally, I was working on 2 projects for NaNoWriMo. I had my old school NaNoWriMo, the kind of new story. I'd written a tiny little bit about it, but just kind of like the concept of the story, and I was going to plot it and write it. It has been a struggle because I haven't been able to completely finish the outline for that. I was struggling with the beginning. I had like a sort of fantasy war that needed to be started, but I wasn't sure how to do that.
Oh,
so I'm still working on that.
She's an obsessive planner and a fantasy writer.
Yes, and my Rebel project, though, I think it kind of helped that I had started this project already. I outlined it during Preptober, and it was like the most outlined project that I had ever had, and it was so nice. And so writing it has been a lot easier. I have struggled a little bit with like editing while I'm writing, which I've never really had that before, but it was like, okay, well, this isn't what I want it to be. And normally I would say just keep writing, but I think it's going to stop me from continuing. So I've been a little bit slower with it. I've already hit, I think, around 17,000 words of new words. So,
that's awesome.
I don't have like a job. It's just me in my house and writing. So I've got a lot of time. But yeah, so I'm still ahead and I'm letting that project be slow.
Nice.
And I'm also working on a couple of other things. But yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, I have a follow-up question, but I'm going to let Kyra and Emily speak whether they have any follow-up questions before I, continue. Go ahead, girls.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Kyra.
Go ahead, Emily. We're both excited.
You go for it, girl.
So, a follow-up question to the question that Simona just asked about, your writing projects. Do you find that you are drawn to particular genres, or is it more like the story that resonates regardless of the genre?
I think it would be the story regardless of genre because I have lots of different ideas in lots of different genres, but most of my ideas do have romance in them. So,
warms my heart to hear it. Emily, what was your question?
Yeah, I'm very curious because most people, when they hear like the NaNoWriMo and the 50K words for just like one project, they're like, oh, that feels like a lot in a month. Like I'm tapping out, or maybe I'll try it and see how far we go. But like you're a nano rebel, so you're working on 2 projects at the same time.
Yeah.
Nano rebel. Did you just come up with a trending topic?
No, that's a legit thing.
Oh, really?
Nano rebel. Yes, they work on 2 projects during NaNoWriMo.
We need to
so
keep
like
using it.
Where did that come from, that like that motivation and that like interest and desire to sort of be like, I'm gonna take the NaNoWriMo and like step it up a notch and try to do the 100K words on 2 different projects?
Yeah, so I have a lot of free time. I don't really have a job. I babysit for neighbors every once in a while, but otherwise I have a lot of free time, and a lot of the times that gets like spent on my phone and social media, and I didn't want to waste time, and I've wanted to just be more intentional about writing, and yeah, so I know that I have a lot of time, and so I was going to try to write more. And yeah, I think that's mostly it. Also, because of these two projects specifically, they are two books in a 5-book series that I already have sort of outlined in my brain. And so I was just like, oh, I'll work on these two. Yeah.
Is it sort of helping you be able to sort of like jump between, because they're all in the same world, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So they sort of play off of each other.
Oh, you have like a Marvel universe of your own.
Sort of. Yeah, that is kind of how it ended up, because it's not like you're following the same characters. It's just how different people would react in this one big world. Yeah.
Kyra, what do you think about this? Because you are sort of doing the same thing. You have your book, The We and the Day, and you are you're doing a spin-off. So how do you feel about this?
No, I think that's really awesome because it gives you the freedom to just play with it. It gives you enough diversity from some of your previous ideas, probably to like feel like you're doing something new, but not a complete departure from what you're used to doing. So you don't feel like you're starting from square one, right? So you sharing that means a lot. And I guess to Emily's point about sort of jumping back and forth between projects, if you're running out of momentum for one of them, you're like, you know what? Let me just switch over here. It's like you get tired of eating chips, maybe you want chocolate, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think that you two would get along very well. No, seriously, because like I can see the similarities in your way of thinking just by listening to you, Aubrie, and I can see that you very much might be kindred spirit of Kyra's. So that's what I'm noticing. Anyway, okay, if there are no further questions, Kyra, let's move on. You have a question for Aubrie.
Excellent. So a lot of what we're talking about today is story arc and story completion and story interconnectivity, and a huge part of story arcs is making sure that each individual character has like at least some aspect of an arc, or they play a role in the broader story arc. So like when you, particularly in your initial stages of your writing process, like what do you do, or how do you get to know your characters well enough to know which type of arc best matches them? Does the arc come first, or does their personality come first?
So I'm more of a scenario writer. I come up with a scenario, and then I figure out what kind of character would act the way that I want them to in this particular scenario. So that's normally how the idea starts. I have more of a concept, and then as I start to outline the story and kind of develop the characters with just lots of questionnaires, lots of questions about the characters, I sort of get a feel of the theme that I want for the story. And so my theme plays a lot into character arcs. And yeah.
That's real interesting. When you say you come up with these scenarios, there is a question that popped into my head right now, because from what I have observed, not from my own experience, but from what I have observed, specifically with one TV show in particular, and again, it's, screenwriting is very different from book writing, but entertain me. Hypothetically, there is a TV show, Euphoria, it's called, where it seems to me that there are these really intense scenarios that the writer came up with. They don't really interconnect with the rest of the story. Like, it really looks like the writer had just this awesome idea for a sequence, and like the sequence in and on itself looks great and is very well written, but overall it like just doesn't connect to the story. So from your experience, how would you avoid that?
I think my scenario more plays into like a larger role of the plot. So it's not just like a specific scene that I like that I'm putting into the story that doesn't really fit with the vibe of it. It's more like just a broader sense of the plot. Yeah. I don't know if that.
Yeah, listen, that's really good advice. Yeah, because And I think we all struggle with this. We all come up, me in particular, like we all come up with these great scenes. And then I don't know really where to put them in the story. Like they're great, but they're more like maybe something for a short story or like a short poem or short whatever, but definitely not like they are intended for a book, but they don't fit into the book. And I'm sort of like frustrated with what this is really great.
Yeah.
And it's been really great, but like where do I put it? And unfortunately I'm not the showrunner of Euphoria where I just do whatever I want. Like put this
That's where you
random
make it bonus content in a special edition
true.
or for newsletter subscribers.
Listen, the social media manager is shining.
The marketing
This
queen.
is not Emily the writer. This is
The
Emily,
marketing queen.
Emily the marketer. No, absolutely. You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, girls, questions, follow-up questions for Aubrie?
I do have a quick follow-up question. So bearing the notion of being a scenario writer and sort of seeing those scenarios emerge within the context of a broader plot, would you say that like archetypes for characters are helpful frameworks, or is it just like, is it better to not think of like the chosen one, the love interest, blah,
Oh
blah, blah?
God, I hate that word.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what kind of story that I want to tell, because I definitely have elements of those different archetypes, I guess. But yeah, it's mostly like what kind of character will fit best into this story, I think.
Mhm. So archetypes are more of like an unconscious thing. You're not like going out there being
Probably,
like, and
yes.
I need a chosen one for this. Like,
No.
yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Actually, the one thing I like now that you're talking about the chosen one, I think we can all agree that the Fantastic Beasts saga is not exactly the greatest. But if I could choose one thing that I actually like about it, it would be the fact that Newt Scamander is a freaking loser. Like, he's just, he's the opposite of Harry, like the very opposite of the chosen one. He has realistic flaws. He doesn't really want to be in a story. Everybody sort of just drags him in. He loses the big fight. I think that's very compelling. So I absolutely agree with Kyra that like straying away from like the chosen one, the one who's gonna save whatever, the entire world, the entire galaxy, is not the go-to strategy always. I feel like realistic flaws and just mundane people have a place in novels too, and fiction. Would you agree, Aubrie?
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about being mundane? Writing a fantasy.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I also really liked, was it the newer or the Hocus Pocus 2, because it wasn't really a chosen one, but it was kind of a character who knew about kind of the fantasy. It's not like you have a main character who's never seen a fantasy movie or read a fantasy book and they have no idea what they're doing. Like she actually kind of knew a little bit about the world and was able to use that to help in the real world. I thought that was interesting. That's just kind of what it made me think of. But yeah.
Absolutely. All right, then. If there are no further questions to this particular topic, Emily, let's move on. You have a question for Aubrie.
I do. So, how do you ensure, as you're writing your stories, that your characters have an arc for your readers that is both satisfying and complete?
Yeah. So I haven't I feel like this would be something that I would do in outlining or in editing a little bit more. I haven't gotten to the editing part as much. I'm not as familiar with it. But I think more when it comes to the outlining, I would just make sure that it kind of follows the arc of the story itself, that there's a scene at the beginning where the character, something happens to where the character has to change to be able to work with it, and then it comes back into the ending scenes of the book where the character has changed and now the scene works with it, or they're able to overcome it. And yeah, just having the character turn with the turning point and realize that they need to change to defeat the bad guy or whatever it is. But
do you decide the fates of your characters and their arcs beforehand? Like, let's say you have a character who's an asshole and they need to go through an arc to not be that, essentially. But then let's say you hit the breaking point, or like you hit the middle of the novel and you're like, I feel like he should just not learn from his mistakes it would be more satisfying for him to stay the way he is. Like, how do you reconcile that as a writer when you have this grand plan? Oh, this is a great arc. He's going to change. He's going to be the hero. And then it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I'd probably have a little bit of a crisis, and I would stop writing for like
Thank
a
you.
day or two.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yes, and so I would just have to like take a shower, talk about it with my dad probably, and just be like, okay, what do I need to do with this story? What I want from this story? Is this what needs to happen for it to be the best story that it needs to be?
Yeah.
And yeah, just reconcile it from there, I guess, and continue on.
Right. Kyra, you have an interesting opinion on this. Please share it.
It's not so much an opinion, but it's just factual.
Factual. That's right. Yeah, it's a fact. This is how it is. That's right.
Okay, so I do have a follow-up question for you, actually, Aubrie. But just on the note of like character arcs, it's a lot easier for me to develop a character arc because in a lot of my stories, my main characters don't make it out alive. So their arc is like not so much about who they become, but how they're remembered, which is honestly a lot easier.
Oh, that hit me right in the feels.
Yeah, I like that
so
one.
Good. Put that on a bumper sticker. That is so good.
Thank you. I do what I can. But yeah,
But the question, yes,
yeah, that's and maybe that could be an interesting reframing of how people approach character arcs in their writing, because on the one hand, you do want for there, like what you expertly said, Aubrie, about there being like a noticeable change within the character. But at the end of the day, a reader is going to read a book, finish it. How do you want for that character to be remembered when they finish writing that last word? You know?
Yeah.
So, the quick follow-up question that I have for you about pertaining to this realm of character arcs is, do you use like any, I guess, plot rubrics, or is it just very story specific, like the 7 basic plots or like blah, 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 like, you know what I'm talking about? Voyage and Return, that whole thing? Or is it more about like the scenario you were talking about earlier?
Well, I do have a scenario, but then I outline it with certain story structures. Is that what you're talking about? Like I use the story grid, and then I use a few other things to outline that. And I think that character arcs can fall into it in a way, or you can figure out like certain scenes that your character can have within the story where it kind of flows the same. Yeah.
That's super helpful.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, Emily, Kyra, any final questions?
I don't have a question, but I have like a general comment. But I liked when we were talking about sort of the character arcs, and Simona had asked the question of if you have a character that sort of like goes off script, like what do you do? And you're like, well, maybe I like stop writing for a couple days and I take a shower. And I would just like to say that's so real though, because I feel like for me at least, like when I take that break and I go take a shower or I take a walk or I do something mindless, like the laundry or something, like those are the moments where I feel like when I'm not purposefully thinking about it, my brain starts to wander a little bit more and like solve those problems for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, Emily, by the way, because I think that during such a challenging time as NaNoWriMo is, I think it's very important to take mental health breaks in general, of course, like throughout the entire year we should look after ourselves better. Me specifically, I'm talking about myself. I'm terrible at taking care of myself, but anyway, TMI. But especially when you're a writer and during NaNoWriMo, there's all this pressure to accomplish something. I feel like writing 9,000 words a day without taking a break could be really damaging rather than helpful. I'm not sure what the consensus is on this. So yeah, Aubrie, any final thoughts, any final wisdom to share with our viewers?
I don't think so.
No, absolutely. You've been an absolute pleasure to interview, Aubrie. If it were up to us, we would chat with you until the end of time. Okay. However, we are doing a writing sprint because it's NaNoWriMo. We need to get some work done. So please, first of all, stay in touch. We
I
would
definitely
love to have you continue to be a part of our community. Stay for the writing sprint if you like. Share everything that you write during it. But for now, please take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Aubrey.
Bye.
Well, isn't she lovely?
She is.
Isn't she lovely? Absolutely lovely.
I'm
Well, that
glad
was
someone else's mind went to that song too.
No,
You said-
oh,
anyone with any like pop cultural anchoring should have thought
Yeah.
of that song instantly.
listen, I'm glad that you took it that way instead of, oh my God, why is this person who can't is singing? Why is this person who can't sing at all singing? So no, I appreciate it. Well, here we go. The interview is done. Unfortunately, the interviews are like the best part of these live streams for me. I don't know about you guys. Like, I appreciate that we're doing the writing sprints. You know what I mean? But like the actual interview where we connect with these wonderful writers is like the actual best. So yeah, without further ado, I'm looking at the clock. We're going to do one 15-minute writing sprint. Afterwards, we are going to read out loud our excerpts for everybody to stop feeling inherent shame about their writing. We will show them yes, this is normal. Even people who do this for a living write garbage first drafts. So in that spirit, let's do this. Watching the clock. 4 minutes, biscuits. All right, pens up, hands up. Are you ready? Who wants to go first? Who volunteers as tribute for the slaughter? No one? Oh my God.
I
guess
can
you can go. Okay, let's
I
go.
can go. I'll take one for the team.
Okay.
You the realist, Emily.
I try.
Tyra took the bitter pills this morning. She's not messing around. She is not here for your BS today. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead, Emily.
Okay. Orion, Dune called, his gaze cast up the main mast. A shadow moved across the largest sail before a head peeked out and peered down at them. A body followed soon after, climbing down the ropes at a speed that could only come from years of skilled practice. He jumped down from the rigging, a quizzical look on his face as he eyed her curiously. Yes, Captain? We seem to have left port with some additional cargo. See that she has enough work to repay us for our hospitality. And stay out of trouble, he added, cutting his eyes to Erden. She wasn't sure what kind of trouble she could get up to in the middle of the obsidian, but she kept her mouth shut all the same. One wrong move and Dune could still change his mind. She would much rather try her luck with him than the fish. Don't worry, I've got just the thing, Orion said with a smirk, looking far too enthused for Erden's liking. Dune left her with Orion disappearing on the other side of a wooden door nestled behind the helm. It's your lucky day, Orion said, leaning against the thick mast. The last person to stow away on this ship found themselves an early grave. Erden blanched, reminded of the kind of people she had made herself beholden to. While Dune may be a familiar face, he was still a pirate. Just because he had spared her, it didn't mean the crew would take kindly to her appearance, and if they were as superstitious as the sailors from Elcian, then her presence would be just as feared as a doldrum or a sudden storm. Well then, she said, running her palms down the skirt of her soiled shift, I'll just have to do my best not to join him.
Ooh. Is that a setup for a romance? Tell me the truth. Is this enemies to lovers?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, that's
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
It shines through, girl. Yeah, this is what's gonna happen. No, listen, I love it. And this is your high fantasy, right?
Yeah.
This is your high fantasy. So the characters already have distinct personalities that I am rooting for.
Oh, good.
So that's great. Kyra, your comments?
Yeah, I think that the dynamics are clear, and the fact that we could kind of tell that there was some sort of like the fact that you were able to imbue so much tension between two characters in that one scene, like my hat's off to you. Like this might give Adaleo a run for its money.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
No, literally, I was gonna say, like, I had to stop and think about, wait, is this Adelaide? And then I was like, no, she's ready. This is her outer project, but like it reeks of that confidence and that Adelaide has, for sure, which is great.
I guess I like main characters with A names. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, no,
Adelaide and Erden.
Erden, yeah.
A alpha first.
Maybe
none.
No, I love it. I mean, how many times does Emily have to read us her stuff in order for us to fully appreciate her talent? I mean, come on. We cannot. I mean, we cannot stop singing your praises. All right. I guess I'll go next. As always, I'm still working on the fantasy short story. I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do with this one. Like, it doesn't have to do anything. It just I don't know what to do with this one. You know what I mean? It's just sort of it's there. Like, it's not connected to any of my projects, any of my books, nothing. It's just here. So let's hear it. Okay, there we go. I closed my eyes. The Trudge Valley's winds were picking up. The elevated snow dune at the top of the canyon I stood on supported my weight, grounded the imbalances of energy sneaking up my spine. Immeasurable pressure and temperatures climbed at a fast pace. I felt the core of the planet condensing into hydrogen as methane was being released into the soil. I breathed, the marl under my bare feet connecting me with the spirits of the planet. I enwrapped its moose and its very core in the rhythm of my essence. Its effervescence tried to overwhelm me, nature trying to take over, to destroy this world, to overpower me. I wouldn't let it. The heat sent the planet reeling, putting it in extreme distress. It was crying, and I was soothing it. Don't think too hard, you'll hurt yourself. My sister Cleo and her voice of reason rang like a bell amongst the quiet insanity about to descend upon this world. She hated wearing dresses, unlike myself, so whenever she walked up to me in boots, hunting gear, and her gray hair tightened with her beloved hairpins that could cut through crystals and bones, well, let's just say we never really matched, in character or in appearance. How was your hunt? I pivoted, getting into an argument with Cleo before the storm was too dangerous, and always pointless. We may not have been matched in nature, but our wit and strength, locked in internal battle for dominance, couldn't clash in a more equal measure. Well, my collection grows. She smiled and pulled a glowing emerald cube from her satchel. Its intoxicating smell, the power of life, pure and distilled, struck a particularly sore nerve in me. Put that thing away. You were the one who asked, Cleo said, her accusatory tone stirring my anger. I was trying to be polite. Cleo and her prized possessions hanging from every fold on her garments. Her eyes ignited with more passion towards them than her own family. Then again, we were not really a family. We were just taught to act like one. Don't you think it's time you enjoy your work without bitching about it? Honestly. She trailed off as if a much more vulgar word was slumbering in her mind, ready to be unleashed. But at the last moment, she remembered our duty and decided not to wake the worst parts of me shortly before the storm. Every 10 years, Mila, you stand on this very hill and complain about the planet we're entrusted to protect. You mean bullied into protecting, I corrected her under my breath. I truly didn't want to argue with her, but it was just so easy with Cleo. Her provocations would leave even the most resilient minds in disarray. No, we were assigned this planet. Tripolis is our home, and I am really tired of having this conversation with you every 10 years. I gave her a look, the kind of look that only a sister would tolerate, but a stranger would knock you out for. When the barely visible crevices of her pristinely chiseled face deepened with a warm smile, I let go of the momentary malice that overcame my senses. The warmth that whispered to me during the storm to start a rebellion against our assigner, to recruit my siblings, rally them, radicalize them. If humans had free will to choose, why didn't we? What agency did we have over our lives? How was any of this fair?
It reminds me of are you familiar with Foundation by Isaac Asimov?
I know the writer, but I haven't read this one. No.
It reminds me of that. Like the language, the world building, like the attitude of your main character like mirrors Harry Seldon.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
This is a compliment.
Yeah, it's an absolute compliment. Yeah. I think I also really appreciated the amount of nuance you were able to create within the sisterly relationship. Like on the one hand, you literally can't stand her. On the other hand, it's like, that's my sister. But also, is that my sister? And also it's just sort of like this whole, like, I love you, but I also hate your guts. But also, it's not your fault that you suck. Like, it just as a sibling, I related.
Yeah. That was gonna be my comment too, is I like the dynamics that you're framing for these two siblings. And I'm interested to see, because it sounds like there's more than just them. So I'm interested to see like how those dynamics sort of spread to the rest of the siblings.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Like, listen, I'm really not trying to be original here. Like the sibling dynamic I borrowed from the Sandman. I'm probably the biggest fan of Neil Gaiman on this earth, and what he did with Sandman and that relationship between siblings is just so endearing to me. But I love to hear, but I love to hear that that Isaac Asimov is doing the same thing, because I am a fan of his as well. But I haven't read that particular book that you mentioned, Kyra. But I will check it out for sure.
Yeah, Foundation is great.
All right, let's do it, Kyra. Let's yeah, let's hear it.
Here goes nothing. As my mom would say, the late morning spills over into noon, the sun at its peak in the sky peering out from behind the clouds. There's still a breeze, but I don't feel it as much since I'm wearing clothes again. And now I know that I would never join a nudist colony. Huh, I guess I've been learning a lot about myself these days. The captors said that they were taking us to meet the others. As we weave through the drying, overgrown grass in silence, Iris and I are following Heath, while Anais and Simeon walk behind us to press our pace and box us in. There isn't really a pace to press, though. Dear God, these metallic men move so slowly. Iris and I could probably take 3 strides in the time it takes Heath to take 1. And for all the strong authority he claims to have, Heath holds himself like glass. One wrong move and he shatters. Good, I can work with that. I already have. That's how I convinced him to let Iris and I keep our weapons and supplies. I don't remember what I said exactly. Probably something smart. But the words just fell out of my mouth again. It's like I'm on autopilot, and I have been since I put my clothes back on. I just have snapshots of all the important things. Me saying something about Iris and I being of greater use with our stuff. Fleshed ones with more value. Heath reluctantly agreeing. Iris's sharp nod of approval. Slinging my bag over my shoulder. The wave of relief I felt holding my bow and arrows.
Ooh. Oh God.
Listen,
I always go into an existential crisis when you read something to me, like in the best way possible. I'm like, No, it's great. It's great. Emily, you were saying, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh no, you're good. I was asking, is this like a continuation of your first person Archer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
cool. Yeah. I like this narrator's voice because it's sort of just like, tell it like it is. I'm gonna like lay my story out and
oh yeah, no nonsense. I'm wondering if Kyra is actually turning into her main character. If that is what we're seeing, she's actually inside the mind of this character, inside the mind of this person, and she's like, No, it's great. I mean, is it any surprise that Kyra is a great writer at this point?
Oh, thanks, guys.
No, it's not.
You guys, let's be honest, we're all fantastic. We're still learning. We're just gonna get better, but we're all pretty great.
True. Yeah.
Real humble too.
Yeah, so humble, in fact. Look up our names. Look up humble in dictionary. Our faces. Our gorgeous faces, in fact.
Yeah, the first picture that pops up on Google when you Google humble is mine, humble, for sure. Yeah, for
not
sure.
A turtle in a shell, but
no. Stop it. Oh my god. Anyway, well, before this conversation divulges into more nonsense, any final questions or concerns to address? No? Okay, perfect. So this is the big plan. Next week, we're going to have a very special guest. I will be interviewing the executive director of NaNoWriMo, Grant Faulkner. Anything regarding writing is free real estate. So please join us to ask questions in the chat. And Grant would be happy to answer all of them. And in the meantime, let's get back to writing and enjoy NaNoWriMo as much as possible. And we will see you next week on Thursday at 7 p.m. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.